You peel off your gloves and drop them in the bin. The last surgery of the day went clean. An appendix out in under 40 minutes, and you're already thinking about the drive home when you hear the knock. Not the front desk, the back door, the one that leads to the alley behind the surgical center. The one nobody uses this late. You open it, expecting a delivery. Instead, you find two men holding up a third between them, his shirt soaked through, dark red spreading across his stomach in a shape you recognize instantly as a gunshot wound. You tell them the hospital is 4 blocks north, that this is a private outpatient center, that you don't even have a real operating room set up tonight. One of the men reaches into his jacket. He doesn't pull out a gun, he pulls out a name. Your daughter's school, her 3rd grade teacher's name, the route she walks home. You step aside and let them in. The next 2 hours blur into something your hands remember, even when your mind refuses to. You work with what's in the supply closet. You improvise a retractor out of tools meant for outpatient procedures. You keep your voice calm because panic in your voice would become panic in your hands. And panic in your hands right now means a man dies on a table that was never built for this. When you finally close, your scrubs are soaked through and your legs are shaking, but the man on the table is breathing. The one who threatened you sets an envelope on the counter. He tells you this never happened. He tells you that if it ever does happen in any direction, your daughter's route home is the last thing you'll ever think about. Then they carry their friend out into the night and you're alone with a room that needs bleach and an envelope you haven't opened yet. Inside, there's more cash than you make in a month. You tell yourself it's over. One night, one mistake you'll bury under overtime hours and a clean conscience. You almost believe it until 3 nights later, when a different voice on the phone says your name like they already know you'll say yes. They heard you're good under pressure. They heard you don't ask questions. They offer triple what the first men left you. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you're doing math you're ashamed of. Your daughter's tuition, the malpractice insurance eating your savings, the clinic's lease renewal you haven't figured out how to cover. You give them the address. This time it's cleaner. A knife wound, not a bullet. You work faster, more, confident. Telling yourself confidence is just another word for skill. The man's associates don't threaten you this time. They don't need to. You've already proven you'll come when called. Within a month, you have a system, a second phone that only rings after midnight, a go bag with sutures, clamps, and a portable anesthesia kit you built piece by piece from equipment nobody at the real clinic will notice missing. You stop asking who's on the table before you start operating because the answers stop mattering the day you decided the money mattered more. You tell yourself you're still a good person, that most of the people who come through that back door are the ones the real system failed anyway. An undocumented mother who can't risk a hospital asking for papers. A teenager afraid his father will find out where the wound really came from. You hold on to those cases like proof, evidence you can show yourself in the mirror at 3 in the morning. You don't let yourself think too hard about the others. 6 months in, you've paid off more debt than in the last 3 years combined. You've told your ex-wife the clinic finally turned a corner. You've started to feel something you haven't felt since residency. A kind of sharp and dangerous competence, like you found the version of yourself that was always underneath the careful, rule-following surgeon everyone else sees during the day. That's the night the black car is waiting for you in the parking garage. They don't ask. 2 men in suits open the back door and wait. And you understand this isn't a request the way the others have technically, at least, been requests. The drive takes 40 minutes. When they walk you inside, the smell changes. Disinfectant, real equipment, the low hum of a ventilator. A room built to actually do what you've been faking in supply closets for half a year. A man in an expensive suit is waiting beside a table where a second man lies unconscious, gray, clearly dying. The suit tells you the man on the table runs half the city in ways that never show up in any newspaper. He tells you that hospitals ask questions people like him can't afford to have answered. He tells you that you've kept people alive with equipment meant for outpatient procedures and threats meant to keep you quiet, so you can certainly keep one more person alive tonight in a room built for exactly this. A guard's hand rests on his belt, not quite on the weapon, but close enough that you understand the shape of your options. You operate. Internal bleeding worse than you expected. Hours longer than it should take, sweat soaking through a mask someone hands you halfway through because yours is already useless. You think about walking away from the table and letting your hands slow down just enough that no one could prove you did it on purpose. You think about your daughter's route home. Your hands don't slow down. When you finally step back, the man on the table is stable. You feel nothing you'd call pride. You feel hollowed out like something in you closed along with the incision. The suit tells you it was better than he expected. You ask when someone can drive you home. He doesn't answer. Instead, the man on the table opens his eyes, looks directly at you and says, "Your work is wasted treating people who could just as easily walk into any hospital in the city." He tells you he's been looking for exactly this for a long time. Someone skilled enough to keep him alive and careful enough to never ask why. He tells you there's a room down the hall with a bed already made up. He tells you your daughter will be looked after better than you could ever manage on a surgeon's salary and that she won't even notice you're gone. Not really. Not in any way that matters to people like him. You tell him you have a life outside this building. He tells you that you had one. The suit's voice comes from somewhere behind you, calm, almost bored, telling you to get some rest because there's another patient scheduled for early tomorrow. The door seals behind you with a sound so quiet you almost miss it. You spent your whole career learning exactly where to cut so that a person walks out alive on the other side. Tonight you finally understand that the same rule applies to rooms, and doors, and the people who build them. Somewhere behind you is a back door you used to walk through every night. Certain you were still the one deciding when it opened and closed. Tonight, for the first time, you understand that decision was never really yours at all.